New arrival. Several months had gone by since I first climbed up that mountain. What I now seem to find ironic is that what I considered to be a high point is now nothing but the base point. I have found my way. And that way is the life we have made for ourselves on this plateau. When I first arrived, I encountered other souls, all with similar shapes and allures, similar to my own in a way. I would say about 6 of these souls had been laying behind the bushes, watching over a small fire, the very one whose smoke I had seen blazing in the wind. The souls told me what I had guessed, making me feel familiar. Each of the 6 had crashed into this place, as had I. We spoke for hours, all new and frightened of the natural world around us, until we decided to build a haven for ourselves right on this plateau. As months went by, we learned, built, learned again, and made ourselves a place to call home. Earth, sticks, wood, stone, we began building our haven. We made huts, homes, workspaces, common gathering areas, all for the sake of community. I finally felt at home. When the rain would come again, followed by the stormy weather, I now had safety, security, community. I could now be at ease. We never ceased building, only making our village more meaningful to us. It was a work of art, but it was nothing compared to the richness of our connections. Many years went by, and dozens more villagers, as we had come to call them, landed on this place, making their way and joining the village. We expanded our village, making it sturdier and more ornate, until all the original mud and earth was replaced by fine stonework. We gathered together, over 70 of us now, around the central agora, as we did every full cycle of the moon in front of a large fire. The scared souls I had met once upon a time had transformed themselves into pillars of a community with a connection at its very core. Chapter 3: Home. Since we last left our main character, things seem to have radically improved. What was once someone very sad and distraught, hiding in a state of pain inside a cave, has found strength and comfort, venturing out to seek new experiences. This embrace of the self and shift in perspective has caused our character to look for more in life, and they've found it. When you communicate your experiences, it is often easier to click with those who share similar stories. The formation of bonds over shared and communicated moments is quintessential to understanding human social interaction. Because our character ventured out of the cave and was open to a new world around them, they discovered that there were others just like them, making the process of connection that much easier. A key part of the formation of bonds between groups of people is a common experience, even if these experiences all happen independently of each other. Learning the perspective of others, embracing each other for who they are, and learning together is a quintessential part of forming concrete bonds with anybody. A benefit of this kind of bond is that you are now in the safety net in each other, people who understand you better and people who can offer their support and vice versa. Because I've always been a very social child, I never really had trouble making friends. Talking and enjoying my time with individuals or groups has been a strength of mine for as long as I can remember. However, in times of mental instability, I see myself self-isolate, distancing from the people who care about me. But for the most part, I've been blessed with incredible friends. That being said, there is so much to say about the downside of social circles. Because circles are often tight-knit, they tend to be closed off. What this often leads to is the alienation of others outside the social circle, leaving the door open for potentially exclusionary ideas to spread from those within the circle. I, for one, have been in friend groups where this situation has happened, often out of either insecurity, need for comfort, or the fear of losing loved ones. People sew their circles tighter and tighter, meaning that people get left behind. The benefits of a social circle are that it provides closeness and connection, but that connection often turns into something completely different down the line, altering the relationship to fit the current needs of people who are often in distress and don't know how to deal with these sudden changes. As I mentioned before, there is such importance to listening to yourself. In a situation where you witness a bond that begins to sour, make note of it. If it happens once or twice, reflect on it. If it forms a pattern and is repeated multiple times, taking action is likely the way to go. Relationships that sour are normal, and adjusting to those said relationships is a healthy way to keep a bond alive by cutting it off, like aiding and repotting a plant that has begun to get sick in its pot. The souring of relationships is not the end of the world, but rather an indication that change can be on the horizon. Although I've spoken in great lengths about positivity so far, it is relevant to view this from the opposite side of the spectrum. Is it ever good to harbor negative emotions? Well, that depends. Having negative experiences and learning from bad times is quintessential in our process of growth. But there comes a point where toxic and abusive relationships go too far. The process of learning from negativity is a necessary one, but the spread of unnecessary negativity and toxic behavior is absolutely not. Recognizing when your emotions have turned on you and are actively causing you harm in a way that is not beneficial or salvageable in any way is a quintessential part of moving forward. Relationships build and build and build, and they often collapse on themselves if regular upkeep is not done. This is similar to what ends up happening to our main character. The village continues to build and build up, and as you'll soon see, things take a turn for the worse. People stop learning from each other and sour the relationships they already have. Now, what if this concept of the souring of connection also applies to larger constructs? In my opinion, I feel like it totally does. Much of the ills in our society stem from isolation and otherness, and other ideas that state that this is the core group and its values, unyielding to change for the sake of comfort. Author and philosopher James Baldwin spoke a lot about otherness and the concept of us versus them. When the power of connection is misused, it is used to cut ties with those who oppose the central premise. For Baldwin, he describes the ills of white supremacy and how its central premise was to boost the status of Europe at the cost of dehumanizing and mutilating the rest of the world. This concept can also be applied to a host of other marginalized identities, including transphobia, xenophobia, homophobia, ableism, fatphobia, and many others. The idea that people who are living within the group are somehow worthless and should be removed from the group is a direct result of community relationships turning evil, exclusion, and disregard for human life and decency. When societies get this toxic, they erect giant walls around them, blocking any semblance of change or progress to the detriment of those living in the city. The way of operating benefits nobody, not even the oppressors, but is a cheap way to reinforce a false sense of belonging and identity, all while being rooted in exclusion. Personally, I have found myself in situations like these on a smaller and personal level. After I engage in the process of inner communication and identification of my issues, I have taken the necessary steps to get myself out. Realizing the toxicity of an environment is the first step to formally exit. And I have failed this in several relationships, but it takes the right environment and mindset to finally walk out the door and announce that your time here is over. Sometimes relationships get overgrown, sometimes they sour deeply, hurting those who thought they could benefit from the power of the connection. The city gates. What I once knew over 100 years ago as my little village had utterly been transformed into something so deeply unrecognizable. The village of a dozen souls became a city of thousands. There were rules now, rules I found myself breaking, for which I had to pay. In another life I had known grand spaces filled with stars and moons. I lived in a state of free floating, unbound to any commitment. As this village began to grow, some of the voyagers thought it necessary, an imperative, to create rigid rules so that some voyagers may know their place. I had voiced my thoughts in dissent, but I was overruled. I believed in humility and healing, while many of them did not. For my ideas I was shunned, thrown into a cell made of beige brick, all for crimes I didn't commit, according to principles I never agreed to, by old friends. The cell was not at all restrictive. I was not chained, and there was an opening. This opening was quite large, basically an arched doorway at the back of the cell, because rather than keep us in, this cell was a means to destroy spirits. I was free to walk out, but I'd be abandoning the only place I called home. The prison was just outside of the city, at the edge where plateau meets desert. If I were to walk out, I'd be shunning myself from a toxic place near to my heart. The door leading to the prison hall was thick and wooden, and the way out was a large stone arch peering over the arid desert. In the depth of my being, I am haunted by the betrayal of my loved ones. The people I admired and trusted put me aside and rejected me for who I am. The bells in the city center rang as I look up to the stone around me. We built this, I built this, and now I had been rejected by my own community. The prison is built into the city gates, so if I walk out, I am forever banished. I think of all the joyous occasions, happy memories I built in this town, and the pain is too much to bear. This is what it feels like to be ostracized. As bells ceased ringing, I took a deep breath and let my feet feel the sand as I departed.